They don't fall asleep like the rest of the world. They don't collapse into the night, numbed by distraction, dulled by routine. The 1%, the ones who build empires in silence, who sculpt destiny while others dream passively, they close their eyes with intention, not to escape the day, but to command the next. Before sleep, they do something most people never think to do. They don't scroll, they don't drift. They rehearse greatness, not in words, in feeling, in vision. In the quiet theater of their mind, they play the future like a film already made. They see the victory before it's earned. They feel the applause before it's given. They walk the halls of success before the doors have opened. This isn't fantasy, it's design, and it's ancient. Carnegie did it, Ford did it, Disney did it, Lincoln did it in the silence of his solitude when the nation was tearing at its seams. They all understood one truth. The subconscious mind is the workshop of the soul, and the final thoughts before sleep are the blueprints it builds from. You see, the average person ends their day in reaction. They replay mistakes. They relive arguments. They scroll through envy, comparison, noise, and then they wonder why the next day feels like a copy of the last. But the 1%, they end their day in creation. They plant seeds. They whisper commands to the subconscious. They don't just hope for success, they instruct it, because they know the mind doesn't sleep. It works, it builds, it listens, and what you feed it before sleep becomes the architecture of your reality. So ask yourself, what do you give your mind to build with? Do you hand it fear, regret, distraction? Or do you hand it vision, conviction, a blueprint so vivid it burns into your bones? This is not about positive thinking. This is about mental engineering. This is about becoming the architect of your own becoming. Napoleon Hill called it auto-suggestion, a deliberate, repeated command to the subconscious, not once, not casually, but daily, with emotion, with clarity, with belief so strong it bends the laws of probability. Hill studied the titans of industry, men who rose from nothing, who built fortunes from dust, and he found one common thread. They all used the night to program the day. They all used the silence to shape the storm. So tonight, before you sleep, don't just lie down. Don't just drift. Close your eyes like a warrior sharpening his blade. See the life you want. Feel it. Speak it. Command it. Because the 1% don't wait for success. They summon it. And they start in the final 5 minutes before sleep. They don't just visualize outcomes. They sculpt identity. Because success isn't something you chase. It's something you become. And becoming begins in the mind. The 1% understand that mindset isn't a mood. It's a weapon, sharpened daily, forged in fire, and wielded with precision. They don't ask, what if I fail? They ask, what must I become to succeed? That shift, subtle but seismic, is the difference between drifting and dominating. Mindset is the lens through which you interpret every event. It's the filter that turns setbacks into fuel, rejection into redirection, and obstacles into origin stories. Thomas Edison failed over 10,000 times before the light bulb. But he didn't call them failures, he called them lessons, each one a step closer to illumination. That's mindset. It's not blind optimism, it's strategic belief. It's the ability to look at chaos and say, there's a pattern here, I will find it. To look at pain and say, there's power here, I will use it. To look at the unknown and say, there's opportunity here, I will seize it. The 1% don't wait for clarity. They create it. They don't wait for motivation. They manufacture it. They don't wait for the perfect moment. They declare it. And it all begins with belief. Not belief in luck, not belief in shortcuts, but belief in self, belief in process, belief in the law of cause and effect. Because belief is the engine, and clarity is the compass. Without clarity, belief is blind. Without belief, clarity is useless. Together, they form the foundation of vision. And vision, true vision, is not a goal. It's a gravitational force. It pulls you forward. It organizes your thoughts. It filters your decisions. It makes the irrelevant invisible. Walt Disney didn't just build a theme park, he built a world he saw in his mind long before it existed in concrete and steel. He walked through it in his imagination. He heard the laughter. He saw the colors. He felt the magic. That's vision. And it begins in the quiet, in the stillness, in the final moments before sleep, when the mind is most open, most receptive, most powerful. So tonight, don't just think about what you want. See it, feel it, become it. Because the 1% don't just dream, they design. And they do it when the world is silent. Purpose is not found, it's forged. It's not a lightning strike, it's a slow burn. A whisper that becomes a roar. And the 1%, they listen to that whisper every night before sleep. They don't ask, what do I feel like doing? They ask, what must I do to honor the mission? Because when you have purpose, discipline is no longer punishment. It's devotion. Discipline is the bridge between vision and reality. It's the daily act of becoming. It's the quiet repetition of greatness. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize transportation by working when he felt inspired. He did it by showing up, by refining, by repeating. Discipline is the decision to act, even when motivation is absent. It's the refusal to negotiate with weakness. It's the sacred contract between who you are and who you're becoming. And the 1%, they sign that contract every night, with their thoughts, with their intentions, with their unwavering commitment to action. Because action is the only language the universe understands, not wishes, not hopes, not someday. Action, bold, deliberate, relentless. Andrew Carnegie didn't become the richest man in the world by waiting for permission. He moved, he risked, he acted. And every night before sleep he reviewed his day like a general reviewing the battlefield. What worked? What failed? What must be done tomorrow? That's the trick. The 1% don't just visualize, they audit. They refine, they prepare, they treat sleep like strategy, not escape. They don't just dream of success, they rehearse it, they study it, they command it. And when morning comes, they don't wake up hoping. They wake up executing. Because the night was not wasted, it was weaponized. So tonight before you sleep, don't just think, plan. Don't just wish, commit. Ask yourself, did I honor the mission today? Did I move the needle? Did I act in alignment with the vision? And if the answer is no, good, because now you know. Now you can adjust. Now you can rise. The 1% don't fear failure. They fear stagnation. They fear drifting. They fear dying with the music still inside them. So they act daily, deliberately, with purpose. And it all begins in the final 5 minutes before sleep. Gratitude is not weakness, it's fuel. The 1% don't practice gratitude because life is perfect. They practice it because it sharpens perspective. It reminds them what's working. It amplifies what's possible. Gratitude is the lens that reveals abundance in the midst of adversity. It's the quiet power that turns scarcity into strategy. Abraham Lincoln, in the darkest days of the Civil War, wrote letters of thanks to generals, to janitors, to strangers. Not because he was blind to suffering, but because he refused to let suffering blind him to progress. That's gratitude. It's not passive. It's active. It's the decision to see the seed in the storm, to find the lesson in the loss, to honor the journey, even when the destination is unclear. And the 1%, they end their day with it, not as a ritual, as a weapon. They list what worked. They feel what mattered. They anchor themselves in progress. Because gratitude grounds you. It stabilizes the mind. It prepares the soil for tomorrow's growth. But growth requires more than thanks. It requires adaptability. The 1% don't cling to old maps. They redraw them. They don't mourn the plan. They modify it. Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb by repeating the same experiment. He adapted. He adjusted. He evolved. Adaptability is the art of bending without breaking. It's the ability to pivot without losing purpose. And it's born in the quiet, in the reflection, in the nightly review of what worked, what didn't, and what must change. The average person fears change. The 1% weaponize it. They know the world won't wait. Markets shift, trends fade, technology evolves, and so must they. But adaptability means nothing without resilience. Resilience is the fireproof soul. It's the refusal to quit. It's the decision to rise again and again and again. Walt Disney was fired for lack of imagination. He went bankrupt. He was told his ideas were childish, impossible, absurd, and yet he built a kingdom. Because resilience isn't about avoiding failure. It's about absorbing it, learning from it, using it. The 1% don't avoid pain, they alchemize it. They turn heartbreak into hunger, loss into leverage, doubt into drive. And every night before sleep, they remind themselves, I've survived worse. I've learned more. I'm still here. That's the trick. Not just to visualize success, but to honor the scars, to embrace the setbacks, to see them not as detours, but as design. Because resilience isn't built in comfort, it's built in chaos. And the 1%, they rehearse that truth every night. They don't just dream of ease, they prepare for war, with gratitude, with adaptability, with unshakable resilience. And when morning comes, they rise, not as victims of circumstance, but as architects of destiny. The 1% are not obsessed with being right. They're obsessed with getting better. They don't worship certainty. They chase mastery. Because mastery is not a destination. It's a devotion, a daily surrender to growth, to humility, to the uncomfortable truth that you are never finished. Napoleon Hill wrote that every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. But only if you're willing to learn, only if you're willing to listen, only if you're willing to strip ego and ask, what is this trying to teach me? The 1% do that, every night. They don't just review their wins, they dissect their losses. They don't just celebrate progress, they interrogate patterns. Because learning is not passive, it's aggressive. It's the relentless pursuit of refinement. Andrew Carnegie read voraciously. Not to impress, to evolve. He surrounded himself with thinkers, challengers, critics, because he knew comfort kills growth. And mastery demands friction. The 1% seek that friction. They crave the edge. They live at the border of their current capacity. And every night, before sleep, they ask, what did I learn today? What did I miss? What must I improve? They don't fear ignorance. They fear stagnation. Because the mind, like a muscle, atrophies without challenge. And the soul, like a flame, dims without fuel. So they feed it. With books, with mentors, with mistakes. They study not to know more, but to become more. And that's the final trick. The 1% don't use sleep to escape. They use it to evolve. They don't close their eyes to forget. They close them to remember, to rehearse, to refine. They treat the night like a forge, a sacred space where vision is sharpened, belief is reinforced, and identity is sculpted. They know that the subconscious mind is always listening, always building, always responding. And so they speak to it, with clarity, with conviction, with command. They don't whisper weakness. They declare greatness. They don't replay failure. They rehearse mastery. They don't drift into sleep. They descend into design. And when the world wakes up tired, distracted, reactive, they rise, focused, prepared, unstoppable. Because they use the night. They use the silence. They use the final 5 minutes to become who they were meant to be. So tonight, when the world dims and the noise fades, don't just lie down. Don't just collapse into unconsciousness like a passenger in your own life. Become the pilot. Close your eyes with intention. Not to escape the day, but to command the next. Not to drift, but to direct. Because this is the moment, the sacred threshold, the quiet space where destiny is whispered into the walls of your mind. The 1% know this. They treat sleep like strategy. They treat silence like ceremony. They treat the final 5 minutes like the most important meeting of their life. And in that meeting they don't beg, they don't hope. They declare who they are, who they're becoming, what they will build, what they will overcome, what they will no longer tolerate. They speak in absolutes, in affirmations, in vivid cinematic detail. They see the life they want, not as a distant dream, but as a present reality. They feel it in their bones. They walk through it in their mind. They rehearse it until it becomes inevitable. Because repetition is the mother of mastery, and the subconscious is the servant of repetition. Feed it weakness, and it will build walls. Feed it power, and it will build empires. So tonight, speak power, see power, feel power. Don't just visualize the goal. Visualize the grind, the sweat, the sacrifice, the discipline. The moments when you choose progress over comfort, clarity over chaos, purpose over pleasure. Visualize the version of you that doesn't flinch, that doesn't fold, that doesn't fade. Visualize the version of you that walks into rooms and shifts the energy, that speaks and silence follows, that moves and mountains respond, because that version of you is real. It's waiting, it's listening, and it will rise if you summon it, not tomorrow, not someday, now. In the final 5 minutes before sleep, this is the trick, this is the secret. This is the ritual of the 1%. They don't wait for greatness, they rehearse it. They don't hope for transformation, they command it. And when the world wakes up wondering why they move differently, why they speak with conviction, why they build what others only dream of, it's because they did the work, in silence, in solitude, in the sacred space where most people waste time. They built empires. So tonight, become one of them. Close your eyes like a warrior, enter the night like a king, and speak to your soul like a creator. Because the 1% use this trick before they sleep, and now, so will you.